Part 1. Culnora. In Chapter 1, Wyatt Dementhal is confronted by a man from his past, Baron Delano DeWitt, who accuses him of setting up a deadly trap involving a stolen sword. As the situation escalates, Wyatt pleads for his life, revealing his past and his involvement in a job that nearly got others killed. The man behind him, an executioner, questions Wyatt's choices before revealing that Allie, the young girl who appeared in the alley, isn't his daughter. After Wyatt confesses that he bought Allie from a man named Ambrose, the executioners decide to spare him, but he still owes them money. The chapter ends with Wyatt returning home with Eldon and Allie. In Chapter 2, Royce and Hadrian pass through Culnora discussing the city's history and a mysterious giant they encountered. They are confronted by Price, a member of the Black Diamond Thieves Guild, who reveals Royce's past as Duster, a notorious assassin. Price warns them about a girl looking for them, who has been asking around the city. He suggests they find her quickly, as she might hire them or be in danger. Price orders them to leave Culnora by the following night. Royce and Hadrian, now with a new lead, head towards Capitol Boulevard to find her. In Chapter 3, Thrace Wood wakes up in a gutter, disoriented and in danger, as a man tries to assault her. She manages to free a hand and pleads for help. Two men, Hadrian Blackwater and Royce Melborn, arrive just in time to stop the attacker. Hadrian helps Thrace to her feet, and she clings to him, overwhelmed with emotion. Thrace reveals she has been searching for them for a long time. The men offer to help her, suggesting a brothel for assistance. Thrace, faint and dizzy, collapses before they leave, but not before retrieving her purse from the attacker. Part 2. Thrace. In Chapter 1, Hadrian and Royce visit the Body Bottom brothel, where Thrace is being cared for after their rescue. She has been cleaned up, fed, and clothed, and is no longer the ragged girl they found. Thrace explains her quest. She seeks their help to open a lock to a tower and retrieve a sword to kill a dangerous beast threatening her father's life. The beast has killed many, including her family, and Thrace's father plans to confront it. Despite initial reluctance, Hadrian and Royce agree to help for a reduced fee, setting the stage for their journey to a dangerous elven tower. In Chapter 2, Hadrian questions why they are taking the job for Thrace, especially since the cost already exceeds her payment. Royce reveals their true motivation. Ezra Haddon, a powerful wizard they freed, has been mysteriously silent for 2 years and now invites them to visit an ancient elven citadel called Avempartha. Royce believes there is something valuable there, and they need supplies and to leave town before they attract unwanted attention. Hadrian reluctantly agrees, emphasizing the need for Thrace to behave, and the two prepare for their journey to uncover whatever Ezra Haddon's invitation entails. In Chapter 3, Hadrian, Royce, and Thrace continue their journey through the countryside near Culnora. Thrace admires the wealth and beauty of the region, highlighting the luxury around her. As they ride, the group discusses Royce's horse and eventually agrees on a name for it, Mouse. At Amber Heights, they stop for a meal and reflect on their pasts. Thrace shares her journey to find Hadrian and her encounter with Mr. Haddon, who told her about a weapon in a tower. As night falls, they make camp, and Thrace reveals more about her past, including the loss of her family. Part 3. The Ambassador. In Chapter 1, Arista, standing by a tower window, observes the bustling streets below. Inside her bedroom, her maid, Bernice, frantically organizes her wardrobe while scolding Arista for her choice of clothes. Bernice mentions that potential suitors have been suggested to her father, King Amrath, including Prince Rudolph and King Ethelred, but Arista dismisses them, finding both unsuitable. She reflects on how poorly she was raised after her mother's death and how Bernice's return has helped guide her. Bernice urges her to marry soon to avoid scandal and stop rumors about her being a witch. In Chapter 2, Arista, determined to confront her brother, rushes through the castle, disregarding protocol and her attendants. Suspecting that her life is being decided without her input, she finally reaches Alric, who confirms that he's not marrying her off as she feared. Instead, he has appointed her as Ambassador of Melangar, a role that allows her to have influence and independence. Initially frustrated and worried, Arista is both surprised and relieved by Alric's decision, appreciating his consideration for her desires. Alric's gesture strengthens their bond, setting the stage for Arista's future journey and responsibilities. In Chapter 3, Arista travels to Dunmore to represent Melengar as its new ambassador. She struggles with the daunting responsibilities of her role, particularly the need to memorize a long list of foreign dignitaries and customs. Bishop Salder offers guidance, advising her to listen carefully, avoid commitments, and exercise caution in a kingdom known for its complexities. Along the way, Arista learns of an impending tournament held by the church, rumored to test courage rather than skill, which piques her curiosity. Hilfred, her loyal guard, remains close but distanced emotionally, leaving Arista questioning his loyalty after recent accusations against her. In Chapter 4, Arista and her companions arrive in Irvanon, and she is awestruck by the majestic crown tower. She reluctantly meets with Archbishop Gallion, who, alongside Bishop Salder, reveals a web of secrets surrounding her father's death. They allege that Esarhaddon manipulated Arista into unwittingly helping him, leading to the murder of her father and implicating him in a dangerous conspiracy against the church. Gallion urges her to aid the church in locating Esarhaddon, emphasizing the threat he poses. Conflicted, Arista is uncertain about whom to trust and begins to question the church's intentions and her own past choices. In Chapter 5, Archbishop Gallion and Bishop Salder discuss Arista's truthfulness and their uneasy manipulation of her. Gallion doubts her loyalty, but admits they needed assurance she hadn't been influenced by Esarhaddon, whom they consider a dangerous threat. They worry that the Patriarch holds Gallion accountable for Esarhaddon's disappearance, and Gallion resents the growing influence of Sentinels, particularly Luis Guy and Thranik. The chapter ends with the men reluctantly preparing to attend a critical council meeting, aware that their power within the church hierarchy may be waning, foreshadowing deeper challenges ahead. In Chapter 6, Salder and Archbishop Gallion join a council meeting where Sentinel Luis Guy outlines plans to crown Rufus as the new emperor, aiming to solidify the church's control. Guy emphasizes that Rufus, a formidable warlord, can neutralize opposition, including the nationalists and Delgos. The council discusses potential obstacles, such as the royalist resistance and Ethelred's reluctance to surrender power. Guy assures them that the church will ultimately rule behind the scenes. Gallion assigns Salder to accompany him to the contest, hoping Salder will balance Guy's influence, signaling an intensifying power struggle within the church. In Chapter 7, Arista, feeling conflicted, wanders the palace halls, haunted by memories of her father's and uncle's deaths. Accompanied by Hilfred, she climbs to the top of the crown tower, seeking solace and perspective. At the tower's pinnacle, she meets Monsignor Merton, who introduces her to Prelate Janison. Janison and Merton share stories of the tower's hidden past and its mysterious occupant, the secluded Patriarch Nilniv, who allegedly resides at the top. Arista gazes upon a stunning night view from the tower and ponders the mysteries surrounding the Patriarch, wondering if he truly watches over them. Part 4. Dahlgren. In Chapter 1, Royce, Hadrian, and Thrace navigate the dense forest between Alburn and Dunmore, struggling with blocked paths and challenging terrain. After several days, they reach Dahlgren, a small, isolated village surrounded by forest. Thrace reunites with a young girl, Pearl, and introduces the group to the village. The settlement consists of humble homes, and the community has been severely impacted by recent tragedies. The group discusses the village's layout and the presence of a large bell used for emergencies. Thrace leads Hadrian and Royce to her former home, where they find two freshly made graves. In Chapter 2, Thrace leads Hadrian and Royce to her family's farm, where they find her father, Theron Wood, sharpening a scythe amidst the ruins of his home. Theron expresses deep grief over the loss of his family, particularly his son Thad, and the dreams he had for his future. Despite Thrace's pleas, he refuses to leave the farm, believing his weapon, his grief and rage, will one day be enough. As Hadrian and Royce investigate the area, they find evidence of a large creature, and Thrace uncovers a blood-stained doll once belonging to her nephew Hickory, a painful reminder of her losses. In Chapter 3, Royce, Hadrian, and Thrace return to the village, where they find the villagers working urgently. After some tension, Thrace introduces Royce and Hadrian to the villagers, including Vince, Dylan, May, and Russell. As they speak, Royce notices a familiar figure, Esarhaddon, a wizard from his past. Esarhaddon explains that he has been tracking them and needs their help to open a tower and retrieve a sword that can kill a dangerous creature attacking the village. Despite Royce's skepticism, Ezra Haddon insists the sword is the only hope. The group prepares to investigate the tower the next day. In Chapter 4, Hadrian, Royce, and Thrace stay the night with Lena and Russell Bothwick, who share their cramped home filled with children, animals, and the scent of smoke. Over dinner, Russell discusses Theron's struggles and the prospect of killing the monster. As the night grows tense, the animals behave strangely, signaling something is wrong. A scream from the nearby house of May Drundle sends Hadrian and Royce rushing out. They find May's house destroyed, blood on the walls, and the creature gone, but Royce glimpses something strange through the trees. The danger has arrived. Part 5. The Citadel. In Chapter 1, Royce and Ezra Haddon travel along a river to reach the citadel of Avempartha, which stands in the middle of the Nidwalden River above a powerful waterfall. As they approach, Ezra Haddon reveals that a bridge once connected the tower to the land, but was destroyed by the river. They discuss the ancient history of the tower, once a battleground in the Great Elven Wars, and the mysterious circumstances of Novron's conquest. Ezra Haddon hints that there are still unanswered questions about how the elves accessed the tower. Royce is left contemplating the complexity of their mission. In Chapter 2, the village of Dahlgren holds a somber service for May Drundle, marking the passing of the last of her family. Afterward, the villagers gather for a shared meal. Hadrian speaks with Deacon Thomas, who hesitates to take action on protecting the village from the beast attacking them. Hadrian challenges Thomas's indecision, suggesting that the villagers stay in the manor house for safety. The deacon reluctantly agrees, and the villagers begin to prepare for the night. Hadrian emphasizes the importance of sticking together, and the villagers start organizing to build defenses. In Chapter 3, Hadrian returns to the ruins of Theron Wood's farmhouse, where he meets the farmer, who is still angry and grieving the loss of his family. Theron criticizes Hadrian for taking advantage of his daughter's money, but Hadrian insists he's not after money. Instead, he's there to ensure Theron knows how to use a weapon. Despite Theron's resistance, Hadrian pushes him to face his guilt, reminding him of the mistakes he made that night. After a tense confrontation, Hadrian teaches Theron a lesson about anger, blame, and the importance of being focused in battle. In Chapter 4, Royce and Ezra Haddon return to the village to find the residents herding animals toward the castle for safety. Royce learns that Hadrian is helping to fortify the castle and organizing the villagers' efforts. As Royce recounts his sighting of a strange creature, the villagers debate whether it was a dragon, but Ezra Haddon identifies it as a Galarabrune, a magical and deadly creature created for war. As night falls, the villagers prepare for a long night, but Thrace reveals her father is missing, prompting Hadrian and Royce to set out on horseback to find him. In Chapter 5, Theron sits in the ruins of his house, reflecting on his past and the losses of his children and wife, Addie, who was taken by the beast. His thoughts torment him as he wonders about their final moments. Just as the night becomes still, he hears the sound of approaching horses. Two men, hired by Thrace, arrive at the campfire, interrupting his solitude. This marks a turning point as Theron prepares to face whatever comes next, with the weight of his past haunting him. In Chapter 6, Hadrian and Royce arrive at Theron's farm, trying to convince him to leave for the castle, but Theron refuses. After a confrontation, Thrace arrives, pleading with her father to leave with them. Theron reluctantly agrees when he realizes she won't abandon him. They flee the woods on horseback, but a dangerous creature, the Galarabrune, attacks, causing chaos. Theron's daughter, Thrace, is injured in the panic, and Royce and Hadrian help get her to safety. As the group races toward the castle, they narrowly escape the Galarabrine's deadly pursuit, reaching the gates just as the creature's attack ignites massive fires. Part 6. The Contest. In Chapter 1, Arista, the ambassador of Mellengar, meets with King Rosward of Dunmore. Despite her best efforts to assure him that Mellengar will continue to uphold the honor of the Essendon family, the king remains skeptical and accuses her of witchcraft and political manipulation. Tensions rise as the king questions the legitimacy of her position and the death of Braga. After the meeting, Arista leaves the palace, feeling defeated but relieved that war was avoided. As she travels through the city, she reflects on the challenges ahead, particularly with the growing influence of the Nifron Church. In Chapter 2, Arista and the Pickering brothers, Mavin and Fanon, observe other travelers in their camp. Fanon points out notable figures, including Sir Endon, Sir Gravin, and Rentinual, who has brought an unusual contraption for the contest. Movan discusses the significance of the competition, which could offer Fanon prestige or land. The group shares moments of humor and tension, particularly when Malvin jokingly suggests Arista might have hexed Alric. They also spot Lord Rufus of Trent, a battle-hardened warlord. Arista learns they are heading to Dahlgren, a village discussed by Solly and the Archbishop. Part 7. In Chapter 1, Thrace lies gravely injured in the Margrave's manor, her condition dire after a brutal attack by a beast. Theron, her father, watches over her, consumed by guilt and grief. Ezrahadin and Lena attend to her with care, but the villagers of Dahlgren have become numb to death, expecting Thrace to succumb. Theron reflects on his daughter's sacrifices to save him, realizing too late how much she meant to him. Just as hope fades, Thrace unexpectedly awakens, her eyes meeting his, and Theron is overwhelmed with joy, his grief transformed into relief. In Chapter 2, Royce struggles to find a way to cross the river and reach the elusive tower. Ezrahadin reveals that elves, once a powerful race feared by humanity, are watching from across the river, their numbers likely recovering. He explains how Novron's teachings allowed humans to defeat the elves in the past, but without Novron's guidance, mankind is vulnerable again. The wizard hints that the fragile peace between humans and elves is at risk, especially with violations of a treaty. Ezrahadin also discusses his magical abilities and the importance of preparing humanity for the looming elven threat. In Chapter 3, Thrace's recovery brings hope to the villagers who start preparing for another attack. Hadrian organizes efforts, including expanding the cellar and digging a tunnel to trap the beast. Theron, eager to learn how to fight and protect his daughter, asks Hadrian for training. Hadrian agrees, emphasizing the importance of practice, focus, breathing, balance, timing, and mental strength in combat. He teaches Theron that fighting is more than swinging a sword. It requires the right mindset and the ability to read an opponent's movements. Their training begins with Hadrian ready to test Theron's understanding. In Chapter 4, Hadrian and Royce keep watch outside while the others stay sheltered. Hadrian updates Royce on Thrace's recovery, and Royce shares his frustration over the elusive beast and the lack of progress with the wizard, Ezra. Royce plans to press Ezra for more information, but Hadrian is reluctant to leave the woods, feeling invested in their recovery. The two discuss the beast's return and the wizard's belief that only the sword in the tower can harm it. As the night grows darker, they prepare for what's to come, knowing the creature will return despite the fires. Part 8. Myths and Legends. In Chapter 1, Royce reflects on his failed attempts to reach the tower across the river, considering a risky boat maneuver but dismissing it due to its impracticality. The wizard, Ezrahadin, joins him and discusses his past involvement with the Emperor and the secret behind the tower's magic. Ezrahadin reveals his role in the Emperor's assassination and the creation of talismans to protect the Emperor's heir. Royce learns that Ezrahadin's true goal is to find the heir, though he refuses to share his plan. As Royce uncovers inconsistencies in Ezrahadin's story, they realize they are not alone, hinting at looming danger. In Chapter 2, Hadrian continues training Theron in swordsmanship, teaching him basic techniques and emphasizing speed and simplicity. Their lesson is interrupted by the arrival of Malvin and Fanon, two young nobles from Melangar. As a grand parade passes through, Hadrian explains to Theron that the event is likely a contest, not a beast hunt. Malvin and Fanon are eager to compete, but Hadrian warns them about the dangerous creature, the Gilarabrone. He urges them to leave the contest, knowing the creature is too dangerous to fight. Despite the warnings, Fanon decides to stay, uncertain of what to do next. In Chapter 3, Royce encounters Magnus, a dwarf responsible for the trap that nearly killed him, and for the assassination of King Amrath. Royce confronts Magnus, threatening to kill him, but Magnus pleads for his life, offering to help Royce find a hidden tunnel to a tower. Royce hesitates, but decides to spare him temporarily. Tad arrives with news that the Church of Nifron has arrived in the village, prompting Royce to leave and investigate. Royce warns Magnus to stay put and show them the tunnel later. Royce also inspects Magnus's dagger, noting its similarities to his own. In Chapter 4, Arista watches as the Archbishop announces a contest in the manor courtyard. He reveals that a legendary beast, the Gilarabrune, must be slain to save the village. The winner will be declared the heir to the imperial throne, Novron's bloodline restored. The crowd is initially stunned by the proclamation, but Sally steps in to explain that the contest is a divine test to identify the true heir. The church believes one of the contestants may be Novron's descendant. The crowd, now energized by the promise of power, cheers for the challenge ahead. In Chapter 5, Royce arrives in Dahlgren, where the village is in turmoil. The Archbishop of Ghent has taken over the manor and confiscated livestock, while soldiers guard the castle. Hadrian explains the church's plan, a contest to slay the Galerabrun at nightfall, with contestants dying one by one until the beast is killed. The deacon reassures the villagers, convincing them to accept the church's help. Despite the sacrifices, Hadrian and Royce discuss their plan to infiltrate the castle at night, preparing for a dangerous mission that may lead to their deaths if they fail. Part 9. Trails by Moonlight. In Chapter 1, Arista wanders the manor to familiarize herself with the surroundings while avoiding Bernice's insistence on rest. She encounters a man attempting to drag a young, bruised girl, Thrace, back into a room. Arista orders his arrest, but the girl clarifies that the man, Deacon Tomas, is only trying to help her recover from a Galerabrun attack. Arista apologizes, and upon learning that Thrace's father is in the village, walks with the girl to comfort her. They discuss Thrace's plans to leave Dahlgren, and Arista learns Ezra, a self-sufficient man without hands, saved them both. In Chapter 2, Esarhaddon and Magnus argue about the myth of Tur, a legendary village said to have produced powerful weapons with divine origins. Esarhaddon dismisses the myth, but Magnus insists Royce's dagger, Alverstone, could be a Turblade. They discuss the village's mysterious disappearance and its connection to the god Kyle. As the group observes the Tower of Avempartha, they spot a creature flying from the tower toward Dahlgren, which is believed to be the lair of a beast linked to the weapon. Royce presses Magnus for information on a hidden tunnel in the river, hoping for answers. In Chapter 3, Arista watches as the contest to kill the beast begins. The knights prepare, and tensions rise with men fighting over positions on the list of combatants. Malvin explains the drama surrounding the list, including the mysterious Tobus Rentinual and Sir Endon of Chadwick. Arista grows increasingly uneasy, questioning who she can trust, especially after suspecting Solly's involvement in her father's death. As the sun sets, the gates open for the first battle, but a dark figure swoops down from the sky, attacking Sir Endon, throwing the contest into chaos. The crowd is left in fear as torches are extinguished. In Chapter 4, the group follows the dwarf, Magnus, to a river, where they swim down to a hidden tunnel leading under the river to a tower. Royce leads the way, followed by Hadrian, Esarhaddon, and Magnus. The water is still, but Esarhaddon's robe glows underwater, helping them navigate. They reach a cave and travel through a strange, water-worn tunnel that leads to the base of the citadel. After climbing several sets of stairs, they face a stone door that appears solid. However, Royce unknowingly opens it with his touch, revealing a hidden passage, but only Esarhaddon can enter due to a magical barrier. Part 10. Lost Swords. In Chapter 1, Bishop Salder, Archbishop Gallian, Sentinel Louis Guy, and Lord Rufus discuss the upcoming establishment of a new empire. Salder emphasizes the need for a centralized government to bring peace and prosperity. They discuss the recent deaths caused by a beast, with Rufus expressing confidence in killing it if his sword proves effective. The conversation shifts when Deacon Thomas arrives, revealing that Esarhaddon, a crippled man, has been in their village. Thomas mentions that Esarhaddon associates with two thieves, Royce Melborn and Hadrian Blackwater, who recently freed a wizard. Salder and Guy grow suspicious of their intentions. In Chapter 2, Hadrian prepares to leave the village, packing their gear as they plan to walk home. He spars with Theron, teaching him sword techniques using improvised weapons, while Magnus observes. Malvin Pickering, now dressed simply, joins them, offering spare swords and shields for practice. The group is interrupted by Sentinel Louis Guy, who questions Hadrian about his presence and the whereabouts of his companions. Hadrian and Malvin cleverly evade the questions, with Malvin revealing that Guy is a feared church zealot obsessed with finding the Heir of Novron. Hadrian is warned to keep his weapon for protection. In Chapter 3, Royce explores the ancient citadel of Avempartha, mesmerized by its beauty and mysterious atmosphere. He searches for the sword Esarhaddon mentioned, but his journey is interrupted by strange noises and signs of a violent past. As he ascends the tower, he finds numerous bodies and discarded weapons, evidence of a last stand to protect the Emperor. Royce finally reaches a balcony, where he discovers a sleeping Galarabrune, a dangerous creature guarding a treasure trove of bodies and broken swords. He uncovers part of the blade he seeks, only to realize the creature has broken it to render it useless. Part 11. Galarabrune. In Chapter 1, Royce delivers weapons to Hadrian and discusses their mission. They learn that Ezra is likely hiding in the forest, avoiding the church. Royce reveals that he discovered a sword beneath the Galarabrune's foot, but left without risking his life for it. As a monstrous creature approaches, Hadrian orders the villagers to hide in the well for safety. Amidst chaos, they quickly lower people into the well while preparing for the creature's attack. Royce searches for a missing girl, Pearl, and just as the beast closes in, grabs her and leaps into the well, narrowly escaping the monster's attack. In Chapter 2, Arista, frustrated by constant company, tries to leave her room alone, but Bernice and Hilfred insist on accompanying her. After some resistance, Arista storms off, reflecting on her past with Hilfred. She meets Thrace and Tomas, who mention an ominous bell tolling. Arista dismisses it, and they head outside to watch a contest. The event is disrupted when a Galarabrune, a terrifying beast, attacks. Lord Rufus is killed, and chaos erupts as the creature sets the castle on fire. Amid the panic, Arista, Tomas, and Thrace rush to the cellar to escape the flames. Part 12. Smoke and Ash. In Chapter 1, Hadrian emerges from a well into a devastated world where Dahlgren and its surrounding forest have been destroyed. Only smoldering ruins remain. The villagers discover the remains of the castle, finding Deacon Tomas, who reveals that a mysterious force, Galarabrune, took Thrace and Princess Arista, demanding a weapon in return. Theron insists on retrieving the broken sword to offer it back, despite warnings from Royce and Hadrian. Meanwhile, the survivors, including injured villagers like Tobus and Hilfred, gather supplies and prepare to leave the ruined village, heading south in search of a new beginning. In Chapter 2, Royce and Hadrian discuss the difficult situation they're in, contemplating whether to continue their mission. Royce is disillusioned, believing the girl is already dead and that the Galarabrune holds all the power. Hadrian, however, insists they can't abandon the job they were hired to complete. The two argue about what to do next, with Hadrian suggesting they trap the creature or steal the other half of the sword. Royce remains skeptical but ultimately agrees to stay and help, even offering Hadrian his dagger, Alverstone, believing it might be useful against the beast. In Chapter 3, Hadrian and Theron discuss their plans as Royce heads to Avempartha. They discover Tobus has built a modified catapult to fight the Galarabrune, and they work to prepare it for use. Meanwhile, Hadrian and Magnus attempt to fix a broken sword. As tensions rise, a troop of knights led by Luis Guy arrives. Guy confronts Hadrian and his group, accusing them of treason and demanding the sword. A fight ensues, with Hadrian and Theron fighting off knights. Tragically, Malvin and Fanon are gravely injured, with Fanon dying and Malvin's life hanging in the balance as Hadrian desperately tries to save him. Part 13. Artesite Vision. In Chapter 1, Arista finds herself trapped on a gruesome pile of bodies on top of the tower of Avempartha. She and Thrace have narrowly escaped a terrifying beast which had promised to spare them in exchange for a sword. As they try to survive, Arista attempts to comfort Thrace and search for a weapon. The Galarabrune reveals that it is waiting for a thief to arrive and confront them. The thief, Royce Melborn, appears with a wizard, Ezra Hadden, just as the beast attacks Thrace. Afterward, Arista is left devastated by Thrace's abduction and grapples with the mystery of the broken sword. In Chapter 2, Ezra Hadden leads Arista and Royce through the elven tower of Avempartha, explaining its history and purpose. The wizard reveals his plan to use the tower's magical powers to find the true Heir of Novron, as he believes the amulets he created long ago will help locate them. As they journey deeper into the tower, Ezra Hadden explains that the amulets protect their wearers from detection, but also contain a unique signature he can track. They reach a central platform, where Arista must perform a magical incantation to aid Ezra Hadden in locating the heir's amulet despite her doubts. Part 14. In Chapter 1, Theron and Hadrian stand atop the ruins of a manor, preparing for a confrontation with the Galarabrune. As they wait, Theron reflects on the loss of his family, particularly his daughter Thrace. Suddenly, a bright light flares from a nearby tower, signaling the creature's approach. The Galarabrune arrives, carrying Thrace in its claws. Although it threatens them, it releases her as a sign of goodwill. After reuniting with his daughter, Theron is instructed by Hadrian to escape, while the creature demands the location of a stolen blade. The chapter ends with mounting tension as Theron and Thrace flee. In Chapter 2, Hadrian faces the Gilerabrone after it demands the stolen blade. He tosses the blade to the creature, but it reveals it cannot let those who have seen its name live. The beast attacks, and Hadrian fights back with his sword and Royce's dagger, managing to stab it in the eye. As the creature prepares to retaliate, a net ensnares its wings, allowing Hadrian and Theron to close in. Despite the advantage, the Gilerabrone breaks free and lashes out, knocking Hadrian to the ground. Theron, defying orders to flee, stays to help Hadrian in the fight. In Chapter 3, after the Gilerabrone breaks free of the net, it charges at Hadrian. Theron rushes to save him, using a broken blade and a rock to attack the beast, but the creature laughs off the blows. The Gilerabrone swipes at Theron, and despite his strength, Theron's age slows him down. The beast's claws strike, severely injuring him. Despite the pain, Theron's actions prevent the creature from killing Hadrian, though the situation remains dire. In Chapter 4, after Theron's death, Thrace is overwhelmed with grief, but in her despair she rises to confront the Gilerabrone. Ignoring Tomas's calls to run, she walks toward the beast, driven by a desire for vengeance. She stabs the Gilerabrone with a broken elven sword, and the creature's essence shatters, causing a violent eruption of energy. Thrace is thrown to the ground, but Tomas, in awe, kneels before her, addressing her as Your Imperial Majesty, recognizing her as the force that destroyed the beast. Part 15. The Heir of Novron. In Chapter 1, Royce, Arista, and Esarhaddon stand by the Nidwalden River. The wizard explains the presence of elves on the other side, including various elven tribes and their sacred city, Estramnadon. After a brief exchange, Esarhaddon hints at the death of Hadrian, suggesting it may have been a sacrifice to save the world. Royce, troubled, leaves, and Arista and Esarhaddon talk further. Arista questions Esarhaddon about her father's death, suspecting manipulation. The wizard reveals he orchestrated it, explaining that all her previous encounters, including her access to restricted places, were part of a larger plan. Arista walks away, furious. In Chapter 2, Royce arrives at the burnt forest's edge, where he finds a Nifron church camp. He meets Magnus, who has been watching the camp, and explains the aftermath of the battle, including the deaths of Theron and Fanon. Magnus confirms that Hadrian is alive, but unconscious. The two discuss the church's actions and Royce's dagger, which Magnus had found. Royce threatens Magnus for his past actions, but agrees to let him help. Royce plans to rescue Hadrian and orders Magnus to steal 2 horses for the mission. Royce expresses his frustration with the dwarf. In Chapter 3, Bishop Salder and Luis Guy discuss the aftermath of the recent events. Salder manipulates Deacon Tomas, urging him to rest and dismissing his claims about a village girl's involvement in slaying the Gilerabrone. Salder then reveals his plan to use the girl, potentially the heir, as a figurehead empress. He and Guy discuss how to present her as a divine leader to the people, capitalizing on her connection to the mythical story of the Gilerabrone. Salder plans to announce her potential status while ensuring she remains controlled and manipulated for their political gain. In Chapter 4, Royce enters the White Tent where he finds Hadrian, Mauvin, Hilfred, and Tobus recovering. After helping Hadrian and Mauvin prepare to ride, Royce tells them not to worry about Thrace, as the bishop's camp is already considering her as empress. Arista reassures them, taking charge of their departure. Magnus arrives with horses, and the group sneaks away from the camp, with Royce carefully guiding them through the forest to avoid detection. After ensuring their escape, Royce investigates the burned farm, discovering a mound of earth with a marked plank at its head.